Welcome to Whoop with Jen, and welcome to the pod. Sometimes I drop pre-recorded episodes, and sometimes I plan and schedule around what's going on at the time, as much as I possibly can, anyway, of course. Then sometimes something strikes me, and I feel the urge to talk about it and send it out to the world for all of eternity. And this is one of the latter. I experienced a huge milestone this week. I took Jack, my oldest son, to college. I don't know if I will keep myself together or allow my voice to crack and tears to fill up in my eyes on this pod, but as I always say, it has to be authentic and real. So here we go. I obviously started this podcast because I had Elle, who has special needs. Jack was a typical kid and hit all the normal milestones. He was this adorable, pale, chubby, little tow-headed, blue-eyed boy. People called him Cracker Jack, and ultimately we converted his nickname to being affectionately called Cracker. He was my Cracker, the sweetest boy, and the ladies at the daycare told me many times that they wanted to marry him. Our Cracker did not necessarily have speech impediments, but he just spoke in and with a unique pronunciation. Our favorite phrases were, "I woke it," and "Where my bird coffee go?" His bird coffee was his security blanket. It was a cloth diaper and correctly called a burpee cloth, but somehow that translated into bird coffee. And he probably had overheard us talking about who would make coffee one morning. My mother-in-law would tell me that she wasn't allowed to have favorites, but kept commenting on, quote, how well-proportioned, unquote, he was with his features. I knew my dad had a special spot in his heart for his first grandson, and so did my mom. One summer weekend, we were staying with my parents, and my dad took Jack on an outing. They would pass this pretty big cemetery, and Jack was absolutely fascinated by the tombstones and the equipment that was there to dig the graves. He was just a little over 3, and he peppered my dad with questions about who was digging all the graves. He was super into Bob the Builder, and so the digger was, a hot topic. My dad explained that there was a caretaker that worked at the cemetery and used the equipment to dig the graves. At which point Jack wanted to know who would dig the grave for the caretaker. This is one of our favorite memories because we absolutely adored the way his innocent mind worked. When Jack was young, I worried about him being too sensitive and having fears. He was scared to death of needles and getting shots, and could work himself up into a cold sweat before all of his well-child visits, and he would ask over and over, am I getting a shot? Am I getting a shot? Am I getting a shot? He was sweet and innocent, and one of our neighbor's kids were total dicks to him. He got his feelings hurt easily, and I wondered at one point if he were gay. It might have coincided when he dressed up in Elle's princess clothes, commando, because the velvet was soft on his little tight butt cheeks. I wouldn't have cared. I just felt like since I had Elle on a different track, an expectation and purpose, I wanted to watch out for Jack diligently to make sure he had everything coming to him that he deserved. Even though he was a November birthday, we started him in kindergarten a few months before he turned 6. I'd say the first few years of school for him were not easy. He had friends, some of whom I did not prefer, and he was just kind of immature. It was one of his good friends, who we still know today, and her parents, whom we call our own friends, that she demonstrated an interest in advanced classes. And Jack observed this, and it became part of his own desires to take these advanced classes and to push himself. And that's when he really hit the gas pedal. He wanted to be in the advanced classes. He wanted to surround himself with like-minded students who all wanted to excel. He kept on this track and pace through the rest of elementary school, middle school, and high school. At some point, as hard as it was for me, I really needed to back off checking on the district website for his missing assignments and what his grades were. I wanted to look over his shoulder, and he did not want me there at all. And I wasn't good at backing off. I honestly couldn't resist mentioning, like, hey, did you see you're missing an assignment or a grade? But honestly, he was really on his own. When Jack was in fourth grade, he was pissed at me because I had let Elle get away with naughty behavior and I did not punish her. He told me as I was tucking him in for the night that it wasn't fair that just because Elle had special needs that I let her get away with so much and that I had held him accountable for so much more. I sat on the side of his bed and said, yeah, it's not fair. I can't mother you both the same because she doesn't and won't understand repercussions. And yes, I hold you to a higher standard because I know you have the potential and the ability. But you get more privileges than Elle does. You get to go to friends' houses without me and do sleepovers and parties and be more independent overall. And Elle doesn't get to do any of those things. And she might not ever get to do any of those things. And would you like to trade places with her? This was my super mom moment because I was exhausted and just wanted both kids to be in bed so I could have some quiet time. Jack thought for a bit and then he nodded and he looked at me and he said no. He would not want to trade places with Elle. And Mom, will she need to live with me someday and will I need to take care of her? This is the moment we never know is going to come when a child will see that they have a sibling who might need to rely upon them and that they might need to take care of someone that is not their own child. And my heart was full of appreciation for his kind soul. I told him, oh, Jack, she's not ever going to want to live with you or have you take care of her or tell her what to do. And you deserve to have your own family and life without this burden. But if Dad and I aren't around, you will need to make sure she is safe somewhere and well taken care of. And that was the last I ever heard of Jack feeling as though he was treated or loved less because he had a special needs sister. And it reminded me to take special care of him because he was just as much affected of having a special needs person in the family as we all were. When Jack started high school, he became very interested in a program called Skills USA. And that's really what has defined him into the fine young man he is today. His involvement in Skills USA required him to commit a significant amount of time to meetings, retreats, trips to Washington, D.C., national conventions in Kentucky, other local officer retreats, other meetings, all around his very busy school schedule. He had to learn to plan, prepare, pack, get himself places on time, be professional, learn to give speeches, have constructive discussions, caucus, debate, and run for elections. There is too much to discuss about Skills USA, and that could be its own pod. But his involvement in it is probably more valuable than the education he got in high school. I believe it will be the best skills he has learned for when he enters into a profession. So the process of applying to colleges is basically the suckiest thing we've ever experienced. Myself, I was a slightly above average high school student. I just wanted to move out and go party. I wanted to go to college for the social experience and to get away from my parents. I mean, my parents are great. I'm pretty sure at the time I just felt like I wanted to be on my own. Greg blew it at his first college and had to go home, take a job, and do some time at a community college before he figured out what he wanted to do and hit his stride. But for Jack, it was different because he had almost all straight A's, a very sweet SAT score. He was in advanced placement classes. Skills USA was a very nice extracurricular activity, and he also did charity work on Sundays. I mean, he is a dream kid. We hired a consultant to help us vet colleges. I wanted Jack to have all the opportunities in the world. And honestly, the counselors at the high school did really not seem that strong. They're just like, plug your stuff into this Naviance website and it'll spit out, a good match for you. So the actual consultant, who was an admissions interviewer at Harvard, he was super helpful in directing us to schools to visit because the purpose was that Jack needed to learn about what was important to him in a college and campus lifestyle, not just the academia, because He said, if you hit midterms and you're stressed out, you don't want to ever wonder why you were there. You want it to feel like you're home. And that meant, from a travel and vacation standpoint, our lives were basically on hold because these trips required taking time off work. They were almost all out of state, and Greg took Jack to pretty much all of them because he had vacation time, and I was self-employed, so I didn't have paid vacation. So I would stay home and watch Elle and wait for texts over what they were doing and what they saw. Over the course of maybe a year and a half, Greg and Jack ended up visiting 15 schools, and Jack also did 2 camps at 2 other schools. Oh my gosh, it was madness. But those trips really helped make it become clear that Jack preferred a school in a smaller town where the town kind of was built around the school. He did not like the schools that were set in cities and busy. So we could at least start to narrow down the list. Applying to college is tedious, time-consuming, stressful, and expensive. You pay the application fee, the fees to send transcripts and SAT or ACT scores. Plus, many times you have to write several essays in addition to filling out the application information. Not all the schools use the common application. Even if they did, sometimes they also had a supplementary application. And some of the essays Jack had to write, these questions the schools would ask were like about the school itself, such as, what excites you about our exciting campus? And that was a school that Jack hadn't even visited yet. And he was frustrated because he was like, why aren't they asking questions about me? The consultant ultimately recommended 14 schools for Jack to apply to, which was absolutely ridiculous. It was way too much. And the consultant really pumped us up on all the schools he thought Jack would get into and receive scholarship money, even though he wouldn't qualify for financial aid. Yes, college is expensive, and you basically have to be at poverty level to get any financial assistance. The United States is messed up. Near the end, Jack got burned out, and he didn't even finish the essays for the last 3 schools, even though he still paid all the fees for it, which didn't make me very happy. I had so many friends who were in the same boat with me, and we all hated the college application process. We would be all over our kids and hover, to make sure they're getting their applications in on time, and the kids were sick of us. It got to the point where I had to let go because I needed to focus on having a positive relationship with my son while he still lived with me. It is very hard to stop parenting and let your kid do what they're going to do, even if it is with your money. So once they started hearing about acceptances and the colleges were, releasing that, we would have a handful of kids at our house on Fridays, and that's usually when the emails would be sent out. These are the most exceptional, hardworking, decent, and nice kids with good grades and activities. Jack had almost all A's. He was in AP, advanced placement classes. He had a very good SAT score. But he was also white and male. And it started to become very apparent that the colleges wanted minorities and people of color. The rejections came pouring in for all of them. All in all, Jack applied to 14 schools and got into only 3. 2 of them were our local state schools. It was depressing, degrading, and frustrating. The kids were so disappointed, and they were so pissed that they spent all these years working their asses off just to get into the local state schools. It did not help that at this time, there's this huge college bribing scandal which broke out here in 2019 with celebrities and very wealthy people bribing people at universities to get their kids in with hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you could not help but wonder if one of these kids stole a spot from one of our kids who actually earned it. So yeah, very, very sucky. It was kind of the worst year of my life. It is awful to see your son work so hard and know any university would be lucky to have him as a student and get rejected. Education is just so messed up in the United States. It's too difficult, it's not fair, and it's way too expensive. That being said, the University of Arizona, which is my alma mater, really stepped up and showed Jack time and time again how much they wanted him there, with scholarships and invitations to be part of their business school, their Elle Elite program, the Honors Village, and it became a complete no-brainer for him to go there and graduate without any debt, which in itself is amazing. And Jack had friends going there, and his girlfriend's going there too. So that horrible process of almost a year and a half was now over finally, and I could focus on imagining him on the same campus that I had lived on, and I believed the world was just waiting for him. But now I have to prepare to really let him spread his wings and go. I wanted to totally take care of everything for him, to make sure he had everything he needed in his dorm room. I wanted to help him get it all set up, and he absolutely did not want me to do any of that. In retrospect, I completely get that. I was begging him to let me, quote unquote, mother him just one last time. He would have none of it, and he was right. And he was just like me when I went to college. I told my mom I didn't even want to ride to the airport, that I could just take a cab there. I thought I would cry at his high school graduation. It's amazing how you just kind of work yourself up emotionally for these big milestone events. But there were so many air horns and people yammering. It felt like a complete circus. And they're so far away, from us on the field. So, the emotion just kind of continues to build up in me over the summer, which, gosh, it just went by way too fast. And just a few days ago, we took Jack to college. He had a great setup in the dorm to look forward to with awesome roommates. We decided to pull Elle out of school that day so that she could see his new home, his school, and understand that he wasn't going to be at our house anymore. We prepped her for weeks. The entire time up to this point, I was convinced I was a mess. My throat was sore for the entire week of the drop-off with an emotional lump. Fortunately, because I'm in real estate, and the number one rule of real estate is that things happen when you have to leave town, because I'm literally writing up a real estate contract on the drive down to Tucson using my phone as a hotspot. And it was a very, very nice distraction for me to be completely busy with real estate that day. The move-in process was really slick. They had teams of guys who unloaded your car like really quickly and put all the kids' stuff in boxes on wheels and took it straight up to their rooms. We went and got a bike for Jack, and then it was time to let go and really go. Jack did not want us to hang around and help him move in. So, with tears in my eyes and a knot in my throat and choking back all those tears, I just hugged him really hard. Oh, and he hugged me back so well, too. I told him I was so proud of him. I loved him, and that I knew he was going to do great things. I told him I was excited for his new life and his future. Elle's little face crumpled when it was her turn. I hadn't seen her look that sad, except when she was little. It actually made me happy to know that she got it, that she loved her brother enough to be sad when saying goodbye. She was saying goodbye to her brother. He was moving out, and he wasn't living with us anymore. Their hug was awesome. It just couldn't have gone better. I thought I would break down and sob once I got in the car, but I just drove the 2-hour drive home, and that was it. You spend all these years preparing your kids for this, but not yourself. The thought I kept circling back to was that this wasn't supposed to be a sad time for me. I knew this was coming. I wanted it to happen, and it was expected. It's a huge milestone, and I mentally got myself all worked up about it. So I just felt like this week I wanted to share another part of my life. I'm a warrior unicorn parent for Elle, but I'm also the mom of someone else, and that plays a huge part of my life, in addition to working in both real estate and finance and taking care of my household and, yes, doing this pod. If I have a message to parents, when you have a baby, even though you do all the work, they really are just on loan to you. Friends, thanks for listening. Whoop whoop to you all out there. Way to go, class of 2023. This is Jen.